and McCann.
Greetings. Welcome to Wake the Dead. Today, we have a special treat. It is the first time for our guest, Robby Marx. Welcome, Robby. Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Good to talk. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. I'm very delighted to speak with you. You have your own show, and you are an accomplished artist, and I am delighted to speak with you, another artistic mind that's been looking at the symbolism for all these years. This will be a delight for me. Please tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself and why. How is it that we should be listening to you? As like, you're not a scientist and you're not some priest with a robe. Tell us, how did you come to this understanding?
So, you look at there's some different ideas about history, and that whenever a person studies history, they bring history alive. Everybody's going to interpret history from their own individual understanding. As far as the histories and kind of these ancient symbols, growing up as an artist, I've always been working with visual ideas and how the eye moves and how the eye receives and kind of the different colors that will play with the visual fields of the cones and the rods, and kind of looking at all. And then as I got older, I always had just fun drawing and being creative in as any way, from pottery to collage to, pen and ink, watercolor to, everything. And I got to the point as I got older where I started to, recognize the fact that there's certain symbols that you see reoccurring over and over and over through all of time. And so I started kind of researching the symbols through the course, and that leads you into going down these rabbit holes of history. So you're going back to ancient Babylonia, ancient Sumeria, you're digging into Rome, you're digging into Greece, finding the origins of things in ancient Phrygia. It's been this long, convoluted process of basically 35 years or more, really, of digging into information. And when I'm doing the art, I basically have it set up so I can get any of the books that I find interesting from like archive.org or congress.gov or congress.lib, LIB library. And I can take any of those PDFs and just plug them in and sit and casually listen to them while I'm creating art. So over the course of 35 years, I've kind of compiled, certain understanding of things,
That's just wonderful. The fact that I love to do that too, to use my ears for the intake and to allow my eyes to keep doing the art. Because a book, it hijacks your eyes. You got to be looking at it and you want it. But I mean, now in this new day and age, we have these computers and headphones. You know what I mean? It's a wonderful thing. And it really, the symbols are a language of their own. They are a language in and of themselves. And to understand that language is to be able to communicate. It's like, everybody has eyes. Everybody has rods and cones. Some people have broken ones, but being human, we see things, we feel emotions. All of this is like part of the expression, and you can utilize these tools to make a more effective image and to get a more effective message across to the viewers. I myself, I was doing art, and I loved the photography and the process of it, and what I could create out of all the different things. And I recognized that I was taking pictures of nothing. I was like, I was abstract, and I was like removing my will, and I was just trying to create the process and find the beauty of the process.
Find the aesthetic, the beauty of the aesthetic.
Right. And how, like with a painter, they'll study like how the paint sucks into the paper, and like they'll study how like the different, so that's kind of, I was like way lost into that and the process and what I could do. Like I was cross-processing the film, and I was using different, I was in a black room doing color printing on the paper, and I was really going into how, like, what I could do with the weird stuff. And then I found like I hadn't, the medium itself, right? And then I found I had no message, and like I had been going down the rabbit holes, and then like I think it was Joseph Campbell, right? Joseph Campbell with the, he and his series with Bill Moyers, and that just got me hooked. And I'm like, oh my God, symbols. Like I got like this is a language, and it is the language of humanity, right? Like everybody has different left brain word, like Chinese characters are different than English, and if you're trying to read something from a different language, it makes no sense. But if it's a symbol, then you relate to that with your humanity. You like the way the pyramid is. It's not like a bunch of numbers, it's a shape. You know what I mean? And that shape relates to the other shapes, and that's how that's where the numbers are found. That's where the real the magic is. So I love that you recognize that as well, that this is it's a form of communication. And I've noted, and like you've done a lot of work for like the festival scene and the music groups, and that has always been like ever since Grateful Dead and before that. And we know Grateful Dead and their connections, Tavistock and all that stuff, right? But I mean, and so they've always been used since the first beginning of those promotional works. It's like the Eye of Providence and the
the Warlocks.
The Warlock, right? Their name being the Warlocks.
Being the Warlocks, and the cross tie between the Tavistock Institute as far as management, and then MK Ultra as far as the distribution of substances. I mean, so you're having the British intel in combination with American intel, and that ties into the British invasion and what we were doing with. So there's this long, and through the course of that, they're using these substances that date back into these ancient mystery cults that are exploring the idea of confronting yourself, which is very much what what happens when you take these substances. You have to confront yourself. And so there's, I think, a intricate link between a modern day full cultural initiation with MK Ultra going underground to become MK Search and MK Naomi, and basically you see you see like Weeds, the show popping up to normalize cannabis. You see like in every show now, what was it, the Bluth Banana Stand, that show, when Netflix brought that back, all of a sudden they're on a commune and everybody's eating mushrooms, so they're introducing these things, normalizing these things. And granted, I'm of the idea of individual sovereignty, and as long as you're respectful and knowledgeable of what you're doing, that a person should be able to do a consensual crime that essentially only affects them.
It's funny. It's not a crime. Yeah, it's funny.
But the fact that it is technically, well, that's the thing. It's
according to the man's law, where we live and what district and all that bullshit. Continue. Sorry.
So you have this diametric kind of thing that's happening that's happened in ancient times, with the Dionysian cults and the divine madness of Plato. And so, and I think, you know, when Timothy Leary's writing books like Storming Heaven, you know, as far as using the substance to be able to, and what was Nimrod trying to do? He was trying to storm heaven. So, you know, and again, Timothy Leary also ties back to the idea that he says he's the reincarnation of Aleister Crowley, and he's continuing Aleister Crowley's work,
Right.
you know, and Aleister Crowley was going around Europe early on, and he had this banjo troupe of burlesque dancer girls, and they would basically do a ritual.
Ragtime band, right?
Oh,
that
yeah,
goes to
yeah.
what the Grateful Dead was singing about.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, you would basically pay at the door. They would give you a cup of wine that had mescaline in it, and then you would go in, and they would, and then by the time it started to kick in for everybody, then they would have the ritual. You know, so it's this long standing thing that's been going on. You know, when Ken Kesey came up with the idea of, can you pass the acid test? You know, Crowley was doing that. Going back into the ancient mystery cults, they were doing the very same kind of initiatory process. You know,
Right.
Yeah. So,
and modern Crowley followers like Tool. I mean, Danny Carey is a big fan of Thelema. Their concerts, if you go to that show, at about 45 minutes to an hour, it starts to really kick in. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So like they plan that all the viewers are going to be like
in
high.
Some sort of altered state.
Right. And they kind of hold your hand, and they kind of bring you to a good place nowadays. In the old days, they were kind of satanic, but I think they've grown, you know. So yeah, it has been since the beginning of Dionysian cults and like the Saturnalia and these this is basically, it's ancient crowd control, right? Isn't that this kind of the same thing what they're doing now?
Yeah, and you figure in Rome, when they brought Mother Cybele or Cybele or Mother Cybele, when they brought her from ancient Phrygia into Rome on the Palatine Hill, they made the religion itself the state function. So they made it basically part of the government, as far as this initiatory process of, you know, being indoctrinated into the mystery schools.
So that's perfect. We just cut right through all the bullshit, going right into it. This is the segue. So here, this is the main topic. We want to speak about Inanna, Ishtar, Cybele, Magna Mater, the same throughout, and we want to talk about her history and the fact that you said that they made her religion the government.
Yeah.
That like, well, I'm an anarchist,
even, you know. and even when before she was brought into Rome, when the Attis and Mother Cybele, they are intricately linked from the beginning. But at a certain point, Attis is carried away by the Dionysiacs, by the Dionysus worshippers. And when that happens, Attis coming into Greek, right? In Athens, like the followers of Attis, they were very effeminate. They had this whole singing and dancing kind of thing that they would do with cymbals and pipe flutes, and but when they came into Athens, they got caught teaching one of the women in the town the religion itself, right? So they took this character that was representing Attis and they threw him into a pit head first to kill him. And right, and then immediately there was a plague on the land, and then they went to the Cybele prophet to basically get the remedy to cure the plague, and they said basically set up a statue to Attis, and begin worshiping Attis there in Athens. And when they did that, the plague went away. And eventually it ended up at the point where the town center, where Attis was worshipped, was where Athens kept all its governmental records. So back to the same kind of thing of, and if you read John Robison, who wrote Proofs of a Conspiracy, which I just did a show on, so recent release on my podcast feed. But if you look at John Robison, who is the origin of the modern Illuminati conspiracy. He was the first guy to write a book on Adam Weishaupt and the French lodges and how those interacted with the German lodges to create the French Revolution. He talks about the Dionysians being very much a order that was similar to and along the same lines as the Illuminati, that were creating these movements to overthrow governments for revolution, for the purpose of creating a vacuum so certain power functions could come in and basically take over.
Right. And they did have the symbol of the Phrygian cap.
Yes.
They had that red hat,
yes,
like the Smurf hat that everybody can recognize.
Well,
so like that symbol is carried throughout, and you can recognize that symbol. You're like, whoa, hey, wait a minute.
Yep.
And you can look back and see, oh yeah, that's the hat they wore during Saturnalia when the slaves became the masters.
Right.
The opposite of the order.
Well, and it goes back before that, before the Saturnalia in Rome, right? It actually goes back to ancient Phrygia, which is where this character of Attis and Mother Cybele or Cybele or Cybele is from.
Right. Okay, I don't mean to interrupt you. I do my best. I'm sorry, listeners. I do my best to not interrupt. But anyway, so like this, we're kind of talking about this Cybele, or whatever. She is from Phrygia.
Mm-hmm.
She was like according to the Greeks, she was like the first iteration, but I mean, she's the same as Inanna and Ishtar.
Ishtar, yep.
Right. So,
same as Aphrodite.
Yes.
Same as, you can follow. So going back with these mother goddess images, right? One of the oldest ones we have is the Lady of Willendorf. It's a fertility statue. That goes back about 40,000 years. And it's made out of, what's it called? Where the meteor hits the earth and it combines the meteor.
Right. Like obsidian or something? It's like a black stone.
Moldavite.
Right?
Moldavite.
Okay.
So this is Moldavite. But that's what that statue, the Lady of Willendorf, is originally made out of from 40,000. So it's kind of a combination of a space feature and an earthly feature that have been combined. And you find a lot of this Moldavite in Czechoslovakia, and they carve all kinds of sacred images out of it. But it's got like a green kind of translucent, and it has a mossy look because it's actually formed in the air as it's raining down on the earth after an asteroid hits, right? Or after a meteorite hits. And so, but then like the oldest representation we have of Mother Cybele or Mother Cybele or Cybele, people pronounce it so many different ways,
right.
But she is the mother of all the gods. She is the Magna Mater. She is basically the one that created the Matrix. That she is the one that basically brings souls into incarnation on the earth, right?
Wow.
And
so she's like Astarte. She's
all of them. Isis,
Nuit, right?
Yep.
The night sky. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see.
Well, Nuit. I mean, I would say. So that's the thing when you get to Mother Cybele. Yeah, that's fine. When you get to Mother Cybele in Phrygia, right? She's represented as a black stone or a black rock.
Yeah,
right?
I was getting to that. Yep.
So, and the deal with that is she basically decided to incarnate into physical form, and she came into this realm as a meteorite. So basically, they went and they found this. It's a black stone. When you start getting into Black Rock and Vanguard, and all these different types
the Kaaba,
the Kaaba itself,
right,
the black cube that's in the center of the earth that the Titans are encased in, the black cube of Saturn. All of these things have to do with this black rock.
Right.
And so, but Mother Cybele or Cybele, she basically is this black rock.
Right.
Right.
So she's born out of a stone, let's say,
and Mithras is born. Mithras is born out of a stone.
Right.
And I think Mithras has a great deal to do with Mother Cybele and how Attis comes about as well, because
the male version of it, and the Mithras was like the for the soldiers and the
Roman
mystery
times.
Schools of the Roman soldiers. Right.
Yeah, with Mithras, if you actually go back to the Proto-Aryan, it's Mitra, and it was literally the light of day. And then as it translated into Greek, he became associated with the sun. And then when it got into Rome, they actually redid the whole thing, and that's when they started sacrificing the bull. I did a whole 2-part series on that. If anybody wants to check that out. But now this rock of Cybele or Cybele, it's this black meteorite stone, right? And they kind of have this thing in a cave, and they're kind of worshiping it as a goddess. And there's also a prophetess that's based around this, because everything was kind of based around looking at the air and the clouds, and kind of all the augury that was going on, the different means of kind of divining the future through the signs and symbols. But now the story of how Attis was born was that it's either Jupiter or Zeus, depending on the story. And you have to figure there's an intricate tie between ancient Phrygia and Greece, because they're just right across the water from each other. So you have trade going on, you have troops movements for protection, and you have all these various things that are precipitating kind of a shared culture. And so Zeus, this also ties into Mother Rhea. Sometimes Cybele is called Mother Rhea. Sometimes she's called Inanna. Sometimes she's called Isis. And I have this Hippolytus quote. Hippolytus, in his Philosophomena, he gives us, it's called A Song of the Great Mysteries of Cybele. And it says, "Hail Attis, whether thou art offspring of Cronus, or blessed Zeus, or of great Rhea, whose sad mutilation thou art. The Syrian call thou much longed for Adonis. Egypt names thee Osiris, the Greeks Sophia, or the heavenly horn of men. The Samothracians, the revered Adamana. The Thracians, the Corybas. The Phrygians, sometimes as Papas, once dead, or a god." So, as far as we go back into these histories, various historians, various philosophers that have traveled in these regions and gone to these mysteries have told us that the worship of Attis and Cybele is the same as Osiris, and Isis is the same as. So you just see all these cultures, and they're all in a very, you could walk these distances in a few days. So, but depending on the culture, they would take this back to the symbols. They would take these symbols and they would incorporate them into their own kind of natural worldview. So you get these different manifestations under different names, but they are all, like, she's called the mother of all the gods, because she is all the, like on the dollar bill, how it says one as many, she is one as many.
Right. And she's still today revered in the form of Mother Mary under the Catholics. And the Catholics, St. Peter's Basilica is built upon the temple of Cybele. And
yes, it was built on the very last temple of Cybele or Cybele,
right.
and so and then you also have, you know, which Peter, Peter Saul or Peter Paul. It's like, so there's a lot of early kind of, and when you look at the Vatican, how the Pope holds the staff with the pine cone on top, and the Vatican has the big pine cone in the front.
And the two keys
of Janus,
right. Janus and Cybele. Like Cybele is the other key, and she holds the key to the earth, while Janus the key to the sky.
Right. Yeah. But that pine cone itself is the symbol of Attis.
Wow.
Yeah.
And also Attis today is you can recognize his crown on the Statue of Liberty.
Yep.
And that's a very manly face, wearing kind of a dress.
Yep.
And maybe he's pregnant, you know, like there's all that. And, you know, the idea, the symbol of like the torch, that's like the feminine goddess too. Like that is Magna Mater, like the lit torch is so
and within the worship itself, there a lot of it was, you know, always star based, and within the cosmology of Attis, there's two torchbearers in the heavens, one that holds the torch upright, and then at the end of the cycle holds the torch upside down. So, and then it kind of folds back, you know, very much on itself.
As above, so below, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the whole Baphomet posture, Salve Coagula and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, okay. And also you said like how the bull one, the Mithras, right?
Yeah.
Mithras ties in because the worship of Cybele in Rome was done in the Tauriborium, where they would cut the blood, they would cut the neck of a bull and bathe in the woman, the priestess, in the blood of the bull. Well, and the same that they did for Mithras, right?
Right. Well, yes. And the thing is, early on within the worship of Attis, and you know, you can follow this. It's the going back to Osiris and how he's cut into pieces, and Nimrod is cut into pieces. Very much Attis is in this. So you have this whole group of Tammuz, who is young Ninus, who becomes Nimrod. You have Attis. You have Adonis in Lydia. Basically, which is in Syria, which is another, you know, they basically say Adonis and Attis are the exact same character, just in one's in Phrygia and one's in Lydia or Syria. And so you have all these kind of linking in together, and they all have in common this idea of the demasculated
right
father or papas, and that's also interesting because Attis, they would call him papas, right, or papa, and he wears the Phrygian hat, so he literally is Papa Smurf.
Wow. You know? Yeah, that's funny.
It's but yeah, all of these cults, they all have this idea of, you know, how we have Kronos, that, or Saturn, that basically Mother Rhea saves Zeus and hides him away, and then Zeus, when he gets older, he comes back, and Mother Rhea or Cybele basically gives him this special little gold scythe, and then they basically, you know, give him this ipecac tea that makes him vomit, right? And when the tea kicks in, Saturn, Zeus runs in and basically castrates Kronos or Saturn. Right. And, you know, and that's why Saturn or Kronos called the Olympians, the more modern gods, he called them Titans, was because of the fact that they had done something so bold as to take away his generation, you know. And then there's the war between the gods, and they eventually end up putting the Titans, you know, in the center of the earth in that black cube. So back to Saturn, the black cube, you know, it all ties in to this idea of this black stone going back to Mother Cybele in Phrygia.
Right. And also the trauma of losing your genitalia and the blood. I mean, so like, I guess the who was it? The pretty one from Greece, the Aphrodite, right? She was born out of the sea foam when they like threw the genitals into the sea of Uranus, and
then in that foam that was generated by the spermatozoa from the testicles, she basically was formed, as well as two other giants that caused all kinds of havoc.
Right. The Galli, or like the Gallus of Inanna, there were these monsters that were formed out of like the scrapings of the fingernail of Enki or something.
And so the dancers that would basically do the ritual dancing for Attis were called the Galli.
Right. We got to get into that. Yes. Yeah. So they did a lot of, would have a cat of nine tails, and they would tear their flesh apart.
Yep.
And there would be blood spraying on everybody.
And they mainly
very similar to Jesus, right?
Yeah. But they wanted the blood to spray on the altar of the goddess,
you
know. But they would go out, and when they were brought into Rome, they were the black stone from Phrygia, right? Hannibal had invaded Italy at the time, right? Or Rome per se, Romana, and they could not get Hannibal to leave. And the amount of troops that he had, and the elephants and all that, they were basically taking all the resources. So, you know, they were kind of going into the state of poverty in Italy. And so they go to the Sibyl, the Cybele prophecy, right? Who is she's a prophetess of, who was it? Apollo. So the words
like Delphi, right?
Yeah,
she was a prophetess of Apollo.
Right. And most of the Cybele prophecies were prophetess of Apollo, right? So they're basically summoning up the spirit of Apollo to get this, prophecy. And they would check it if it was in Greek hexameter. That's how they knew it was real, right? If it wasn't, they would just toss it to the side. But basically, the Cybele prophecy told them, in order to get Hannibal out of Italy, you need to go to Phrygia and basically take this Phrygian goddess, Mother Cybele or Cybele, and bring her to Rome. So there's this whole process of them, going, and it was already predetermined that it was going to happen because the Cybele prophecy told them. The Cybele prophecy is related to the Sibyl or the Cybele. And so they bring this rock. There's a whole thing where they bring it across land, across the water, it gets stuck in the river. There's this story about this woman putting her bosom on the hull of the ship to push it out, and it gave it the fertility it needed to, and they bring it the rest of the way to Capitoline, and they put it immediately on Palatine Hill. And this is the home where all the gods are, right? And she basically becomes, within the Roman culture, she becomes the mother of all the gods. And all the gods, then they start to write new rituals incorporating, various who was it, Mithras, into the rituals. They write Pan into the rituals. You start to see and Attis is represented by a goat, and there's this whole thing that Mother Cybele is actually Attis, and that her companion was a goat or Pan. So this kind of ties back into ancient Acadia. But
kind of reminds me of the witches. They're the witches of modern day or whatever, modern day, the 1600s and stuff, and they would consort with Pan
and the goat.
And the goat, right? Yeah. And that was their right.
The Masons ride the goat.
Right. That's
Go ahead. It was like,
I was gonna say that the goat is like this. There's like some higher, like the top of evil basically speaks through this, and then the witches are consorts of the devil basically, by way of this goat Pan, and Pan is like the forces of nature and shit. That's like
it's everything
scary to you. Right. Up, generative force. Right. And like that is what's scary to the Christians of the old, chaos.
And like I was saying, the Masons, you ride the goat. When you get into the recent parade that they had when they inaugurated King Charles III, they basically have the parade, and then the very front of the parade, they have this white goat that it leads the whole parade. And on the white goat, there's a vest that has a patch that says the red dragon leads the way. So, this goat figure, and there was a huge amount of, you go back to the age of the ram, and you have the rise of Abraham, or, the man of the ram,
Abraham.
Yeah. So there's all of this, and in Thebes, they would actually worship a ram. And they would have a yearly festival with some bestiality aspects involved, and so the ram has been something that's been in long standing, before the age of Pisces, which is the age of fishes, which brought about kind of this idea of this Christ consciousness.
The precession of the equinoxes.
Equinoxes, the Platonic year.
Right. Yeah. So that's the old religion, right?
Yeah.
I guess before that would be, what would that be? The Gemini, like time. I mean, that's like prehistory when they were, So the time of Sumeria and when this Inanna myth is being generated is during the time of the goat, right? And so it is the old religion. It's like, it's a continuation. It's kind of been going this whole time. And if you learn from like Mark Passio or something, he was a member of the modern day LaVeyan Church of Satanism.
Right.
He's not anymore, but I mean, he was, and he was talking about how that fits into the wider world dominating cult of Satanism, and how this is like a philosophy, and what it goes like. It's pretty interesting, but basically religions are a tool for controlling people. It's like a mind control device, and religion has been created since forever to control the masses, ever since societies. And that's where right. And like the first society was I don't know.
Well, you have
Uruk or whatever, the big city state where they worshipped Inanna, right?
Right. And that city was built by, some say Nimrod, some say Cain.
Right.
And Nimrod is a form of this worship, because Nimrod eventually, in the Bible, he gets his head cut off, and they take the skin from him, and basically that becomes the priestly garment in the house of basically creating the 12 tribes of Israel.
Right.
So,
and was that a snake skin shed? I mean, what? But anyway, like,
well,
So
From
that Go
what
ahead.
I've found, it's actually the preserved skin of Adam that they got from the
Right.
cave of treasures and brought it over. And the Bible has the lineage, as well as Madame Blavatsky talks about a different lineage. But Nimrod, nonetheless, Madame Blavatsky says at the age of 22, he put the skin on and became basically the ruler over all of Mesopotamia.
Wow. So okay. So this that was the old religion to them, to Nimrod. So Nimrod was like Sol Invictus, I guess. He said, I am the sun. My birthday is December 25th. And then
Yep.
his wife, Semiramis,
Yep.
and then he dies, and they're like, whoa, I thought you were immortal, guy. What the hell? And then the Semiramis is like, don't worry, he is immortal.
Yep.
And then she goes and gets pregnant, and then she says, I was impregnated by the sun.
Right.
And this inside me is Nimrod again.
Right.
And
Just like Isis.
Right.
And, Osiris and Horus.
Yes, exactly.
And you see this in Babylon, you see this in Egypt, you see this in Syria, you see this in Phrygia. And it's always this, it's either the father marrying the daughter, or it's the mother marrying the son. And there's always this hopscotching of the same entity being reborn. So the mother will usually be married to the husband, and then the husband dies. The mother becomes pregnant and gives birth to the husband reincarnated, and then the mother marries the son. And you see that happening over and over and over again in these mystery cults.
Well, if you think about it, in the old days, the women didn't have any agency, really. They had to wield power through their husbands, and Semiramis was the first queen. Yep. She ruled for 40 years or however long time. And she, it makes sense that she tells everybody that she is the embodiment of Inanna. She's like, I am Ishtar, telling everybody that, and then that deifies her. And then Ishtar's power is sex and war, and then you look at
and that's the more that sex and war is the morning and evening star.
Right.
Because you have the morning star, which is the frisky calf, which is based around playfulness and loving, and basically sex. And then you have the evening star, which is based around the war and in Inanna, they said that the war was her place or her playtime. And I think that if you watch that modern Wonder Woman movie and how she fights and she's like bending time and like nobody can even touch, that's kind of a very much a representation of Ishtar-Inanna in her state of war.
It's funny because literally the symbol she's got on her third eye is an 8-pointed star.
Yes, exactly.
Which is the
star of Ishtar-Inanna, which becomes eventually the star of Melchizedek and the line of the prophets of the Judaic faith from Judaism into Christianity into Islam.
Right.
So,
and that's like the high priests is Melchizedek, right?
Right.
Wow.
And Jesus was a priest of the order of Melchizedek, completely bypassing the Judaistic system, saying he harkens back to an earlier priesthood that supersedes,
Right. And what they give us today of religion is, obviously, like I said before, it's mind control in order to capture our will, right? They're not going to give us a true story.
Right. But on a certain level, I think there is some sort of a necessity for creating moral values within people of truth and honesty. And I think that's a lot of what the ancient philosophers kind of were instilling in regard to the idea of knowing thyself, being true to thyself. You get into Stoicism, and it's basically like recognizing the world for what it is and living in it within that accordance of truth. And Jesus says, I am the truth and the way and the light, and when you get into logic and rhetoric and, fallacy, the truth is at the top. And the other two ways are basically ways to hash out whether something is true or not. So, there's been this inherent thing that I think we've lost in regard to living in truth, knowing thyself, and kind of a moral sense of upstanding that basically helps the whole of society.
Right. Yes. And I agree. And I think that they, if they may be satanic as a group, but in order to catch the normal people, you can't have your religion be straight up satanic and not moral. Like the natural default of humanity is morality. And I think that they needed that for their religion to catch people like flypaper. And, people want the truth and they want to live a moral life. And then they can say, oh, here's this holy Bible we created for you to capture your consciousness. And, oh, look at his bloody body hanging there. And, oh, look at the Stations of the Cross. You better do what Rome says or else,
Follow the labors of Hercules.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like be the slave, feel the pain, right? And this is life and you'll get yours in the afterlife and just give everything to the king and like this hierarchy structure. Don't mind that. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? It's evil, obviously. But so that, the modern Satanism, they like, you could hear Nicholas Schreck talking to a Christian, like in an interview, speaking straight up how he says Satanism is the religion of the ruling class. We, the owners of the world, this is us. This is what we think and how we do it. And if you want to give charity, then we think that's your problem, but go right ahead and do so.
Providence,
right. But we, you go ahead and try to do that, but you're never going to get anywhere. We're going to be over here building something else, and capturing you who wants to give charity. Oh, you want to give charity? We got this Red Cross, give to us, and it's everything. They're always usurping that moral instinct, like that instinct that people have to be moral, to be moral. The Satanists are there to like say, oh, like there's a song by Meshuggah where it's dancers to a discordant system, where they sing about like how, because we trust, we will be betrayed. Like these are faults of humanity, like, and the Satanists understand us more than we know ourselves, and they will give us a trap to catch us. And so if you want to be a moral person, here, have this Jesus guy, and he's going to turn the other cheek, and he's going to get murdered by Rome. And, even though he lives the best life, he's your God and represents your morality. Here, drink his blood.
And interestingly, when you start looking into the ideas of the origins of Jesus and what he originally was, as far as hanging out with beggars and thieves and turning against the state and talking about the overthrow of the temple, overturning the money changers' tables, he was a true rebel against the system. And, and when you look at the fact that he was baptized by John the Baptist, who was an Essene, a lot of people connect him to the Essenes. And then you get into the work of John Allegro, and you follow that in as far as the Vatican archivist that basically went in to look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. And there's a huge amount of information that these Essenes were essentially growing mushrooms in dark kind of cave spaces, and that they were really living outside of society. They were kind of like had the attitude of Terence McKenna in regard to culture is not your friend. They wanted to abstain from a lot of what the world had to offer because they thought the world was corrupted. So, you know, it's and then when the Roman church comes in and basically overlays you know, one of the Caesars, what was it, Julian, over the Christ myth, and you know, they write in to give unto Caesar what is his, and the books of the Bible are standardized, you know, by King James, and King James at the same time he's releasing the King James Bible, he's also releasing demonology book,
right.
you know, so you know, it's like the dialectic between the left and the right hand and how they play, you know, and the left hand almost becomes cool where the right hand almost becomes hot. And you know, in order to maintain the righteousness, there's a large amount of vengeance, whereas the left hand, in order to precipitate its ideas, it's because it is seemingly a natural form that is, you know, and it really is, because it goes back to, you know, worship of nature, and then you go back to Pan, of course. So there's this dialectic where, you know, no matter which way you go, you're going to get served, you know.
Man, and that's like what I mean. The Catholic religion, the word Catholic means all encompassing, like
universal.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's like a capturing of the whole world and all of their religions into the one. So like Jesus is the Tammuz, right? You know, it's and they
who is Addis.
Yes. And who demasculinated himself, like, and then Jesus didn't have any sex either. And Jesus is from Galilee, right? And he had long hair and a beard,
and a long robe,
and he hung out with the whores and the robe, right.
And he's involved in this divine feminine cult. When you start to look into the Magna Mater and Mary Magdalene, and you start to look into the aspects of Sophia, and there was a whole religious cult of these seven divine feminine aspects, which are the seven divine points of liberty or rays of light on the Statue of Liberty, which go back to Addis and his early representations.
Seven colors of the
rainbow, seven nations, 7 days of the week, seven, 777, Aleister Crowley.
7 notes on the scale of music, like
and that goes back to Pythagoras and the humming of the spheres that were the sacred tune of Osiris that the priests of Osiris would chant. You know, it's
so like we kind of talked about how he's demasculinized or whatever, but like literally Addis cut off his own genitals.
Yes. So
you want to talk about that? You want me to maybe like give you a little more to segue with?
So the thing with that is, so you go back to that black stone, right? And that is the mother. That is the mother of the mountains, Mother Cybele, Mother Cybele. And in the legends, it say that either Jupiter or Zeus came and he longed for her, like sexually, and she resisted all of his, plying to try to have her, and he spilled some semen, actually, in excitement, on this mountain, that basically is the same name as they called the Black Stone. So the Black Stone is Cybele. She's the mother of the mountains. And so from this Black Stone or this mountain, when the semen was spilled, this caused this creature to come out of the rock or out of the mountain that is Agdistis, right? And it's the
Agdistis?
Hold on, I got it right here.
Okay, I think it's Agdistis, but I might be wrong.
And but it's
so like that is
Agdistis,
the son.
Yes.
Okay, right. So that is the son of Cybele, right?
That's this offspring of this rock. Right?
Okay, right.
And we know also that Mithra was born of a rock, right? And when Mithra came out, he had a dagger in one hand and a lamp to illuminate, and the dagger was to guard his liberty and the lamp was to illuminate the way, right? So very much in the same way, this creature, Agdistis, it's hard to say, right. Basically is born of this rock. And so that's the whole thing. This creature is a hermaphrodite, right? And it has both male and female reproductive, which gets into this whole ancient cult of these virgin births, right? And these ideas of what's it called? Where the mother can impregnate herself, essentially. Right. And you see that in some different animals in the natural world. And there is a Swedish doctor, a physicist, that basically says that humankind can do this too. She has a whole book. Yeah, there's this, her name is Lynn Collins, and she has this book called The Greatest Story Never Told, which is all about this cult of the virgin and how I wish I could remember the parthenogenesis. So it's called parthenogenesis, where the mother can impregnate herself. And basically during times of tribulation on the earth, like as if the earth were to flip over or have some crazy changes where humanity was at risk, then there is a belief that women can start, because they have all the genetic material that they need to be able to make clones of themselves, right? But nonetheless, this Agdistis was both a hermaphrodite with both male and female. So the gods were like, we have to, like, they were afraid of her. Basically,
they were freaked out by it. It's just like weird. Like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, because she could procreate on her own,
right,
and make clones of herself,
right? Like Samael and Lilith does. Like when they are copulating together, it's like a one being just making monsters, right?
Right.
So,
generating all the demons coming out of the Red Sea. Yeah.
So like that. So what did they do to that? They were like, they had to do something about it. They couldn't just let it be like.
So what they did, and there's an argument whether this creature, Agdistis, is Mother Cybele, or if she actually is Attis himself, but nonetheless, there's all this variation between the play of the male and the female, right? So one of the stories, the gods on Olympus, they basically got Dionysus, right? And some say this was in order for him to gain his immortality as a god, right? And he basically goes in and he's the god of wine, right? So they, looking down from Olympus, they see the bubbling, gurgling stream that Agdistis basically bathes at and drinks from and kind of enjoys the cool shade under this tree. And so they send Dionysus down, and he fills the stream or the spring with wine. So when Agdistis basically drinks the stream, they call her he in most cases, becomes drunk and passes out, right? And then they basically take the male portion of the organ and with a stout cord and tie it to a tree. And when Agdistis wakes up,
I thought they tied it to his own toe.
You see, there's so many stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Please continue.
Yeah, this is in the one with the Dionysus story, as far as him gaining his own immortality. But yeah, so nonetheless, when Agnes wakes up, it pulls off his male portion and leaves him or her now as a female, right? So now she's no longer a threat because she's lost her generative properties, much like Osiris with his phallus, much like Saturn demasculating Kronos. You just see this story over and over and over. And then I believe that this Agnes character actually becomes the physical representation of Mother Cybele.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess the story's all mixed, but right. So like the blood that drips out of Agdistis grows a pomegranate tree, I think.
An almond tree.
An almond tree. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's and then
there's a river nymph's daughter.
Yeah.
A daughter of a river that's a nymph that basically sees this beautiful tree and she tends to it, and then she harvests the almonds, and one of the almonds
between her boobs, right?
Yeah, in her breast and in her bosom, and then and I've also seen one where she collected them in her lap, you know. But nonetheless, one of the almonds disappears and impregnates her. And this is another story of how Attis is born.
Right.
So
that's like, I mean, if you follow that story, that's like the grandson of
Zeus.
Cybele. Well, of Zeus. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because Cybele was just there, just hanging out. And Zeus did it
just
himself.
A rock. He just wanted, because Zeus was like going around with like everything he could get it on.
Zeus was messed up.
Yeah, man.
Dude,
I mean, crazy. How many kids does he have? You know,
they're all his kid, pretty much. And it's all the monsters too, because of all these like failed attempts at rape. Like you know, like all
like the Minotaur. Because he's the one that sent the great white bull that ends up copulating with and having the Minotaur that only devoured flesh, which is another representation of Nimrod, you know, and the whole idea of the cannibals or the priest of Baal going back to ancient, you know, Canna, and it's you know.
Yes, dude, the cannibals. Like, I'm so glad you recognize that too. Like, they are the priests of Baal. That's they eat the flesh. Because they're setting the flesh on fire as a sacrifice to Baal. And this is what they're doing. And then they taste it because they're gods too. I'm a god.
Well, and there was a priestly. Well, there was actually a priestly regulation that the priest had to eat of the sacrifice.
Right.
So whether it was the bull sacrificed or whether it was a human sacrifice, part of the function of the priest. And this is at the time when the priesthood was also directly tied into hunting as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And Nimrod was the hunter. And Nimrod Nimrod would wear the skin of Adam, and then all the animals would come around because they're like, "Oh, that smells like Eden." And then Nimrod would kill him. Like, that's so evil. Holy crap.
He could just he could harvest whatever he wanted because they were unafraid of him. Yeah.
Right. So so Attis now is born, and he's gonna marry some king's daughter or something. I forget what he's gonna marry.
And this is how it kind of all weaves in all these weird directions, because Agdatis, Cybele, was in love with Attis, because and initially, so after he was born, that river nymph, the father, the river, wanted to actually kill her because of the disgrace to the family of her getting pregnant by some unknown, you know,
she's a slut, basically.
Exactly. So they take the child, young Attis, and they leave him in the field as a foundling. And
just like what they did to Noah, where they sent him down the river, like get rid of him. Or not Noah, the other one,
Moses.
Moses, right?
Yeah.
So many names. Sorry.
Yeah, I know, so many characters, man. It's hard to keep track of all of them. So now when they leave Attis in the field as a foundling, basically a goat comes and takes care of him and feeds
goat's milk,
it's milk, right? And this is very much the same story of Zeus, who
Same
when
as Romulus Remus too. It was
Remus
like a
being fed by the lupa.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in the lupa, if you go back to ancient Roman culture, the lupa was actually the high priestess of a temple. So basically,
So it was the bosom of Nana, the daughter of the right.
Yes.
Wow.
So they're getting fed by the goddess herself, essentially.
Yes.
Right. In the form of, I mean, they say a dog, but if you look into the mythology, the lupa actually is the high priestess. So, you know, it's
sense.
yeah. So, but Addis in the field, eventually these shepherds come along and they find the goat taking care of the child. They take the child, the shepherds raise it up. He becomes very comely and handsome. Adjutus, or Mother Cybele, falls in love with him, right? But he's already arranged to marry this king's daughter. Right. And so Adjutus basically goes to the wedding and freaks out and kills herself. And no, it's Addis that kills himself because she shows up.
She causes Addis to go crazy.
Right.
And then he, in his
back to the divine madness.
Yep. Right. With the whole thing of like the mystery cults and doing the drug and being crazy. So Addis, in his craziness, takes the sickle and cuts off everything.
Well, some say it's a shard of terracotta pottery. Some say it's a sharp stone.
I'm thinking about the sickle from the other story, but go ahead. Right?
From Saturn. And
so he finds a blade and he cuts off his balls and shaft, all of it off. And he becomes a nummo, as they call it. And the blood drips, and that blood sprouts purple violets.
Right.
And
those violets, they're white with red dots on them.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay, like the mushroom. Kind of like the red and white of the mushroom. And the red and white is the magic colors of the semen and the
starfire.
The starfire, right.
Right.
So like that. Okay. And then that happens in front of a pine tree.
Well, in order to, because Cybele or Adjutus basically goes to Zeus and is crying and pleading and wants to preserve his body from decay. So Zeus turns him into the pine tree.
Right.
And that's where you get the idea of the tall standing pine, which Osiris is the tall standing fir. And Osiris,
evergreen, it like never dies,
evergreen,
right?
exactly,
It never decays. It doesn't decay.
Yes. So, and then when you look back at the story of Osiris, right, the first time that his first death, when he's put in the box by Set and sent down the river, he ends up in Byblos, right? And Byblos is where this Adonis worship is, which is an exact replica cult of Attis in Phrygia.
And that's where they make the paper. That's where they do.
That's where they make the paper. That's where we get the word Bible or Biblos or book. Actually, it's book.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
And so Osiris was in a column.
In a tamarisk tree. The tamarisk tree grew up around that box.
Right. Okay. So like, yes. And that was turned into a column. And then Isis as a dove, which is like the bird of Inanna.
Justice and liberty.
Right. She sniffs him out in that column. And then.
Because it's emanating that, again, back to this idea of this pleasant smell.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. And that's like the one that's the sense that's most connected to our brain. Like that's the first one connected to memory. It's like smell is huge.
Smell is
yeah.
Reactivate Alzheimer's patients into their living memories.
Wow,
in
really?
Real time. They'll be completely out and they'll play music to them, and all of a sudden they'll come alive and they'll be in the time when they experience the music and experiencing the joy, and then as soon as they turn the music off, they go right back. It's wild, man.
Just like Mickey Hart, what Mickey Hart did with his dad. Like, right? Mickey Hart played, had like this he played a rhythm, and that kind of brought back life. It's amazing how that works. Like, People are amazing. And
well, in the galley, getting back, we were going to talk about the galley.
Yes.
These were the converts to the worship of Attis, right? And they dressed in feminine clothes. They had long hair, and they would do these dances. And they weren't battle dances, but they had swords. Sometimes you see them with the Roman helmets with the red mohawk on, but they would basically do these dances and try to get donations for the cult.
Right.
And initially they were limited to Palatine Hill, but when they made it the state religion, they opened it up and allowed them one day a week to go around and do these dances to beg for money for the cult, right? And then they had what they called the Day of Blood, right? And it was one day of year where they would essentially, at the height of the festival dedicated to Attis, they would have that day where the people would enter into that state of divine madness, and they would, demasculate themselves. And
right.
then
they would do that at the festival in front of everybody.
Festival. Yeah. And
along with all of the cats and nine tails, everybody else bleeding all over everybody.
Yep.
And like, it's just this bloody spectacle.
Oh yeah. And so eventually when you get into the Toro Oblarium, right? There was also the Toro Oblarium was for the sacrificing of the bull, right? And then there was another, and that happened in the cult of Cybele. And then there was another one that they would sacrifice a ram. And it was, I just can't remember the
Jewish religion, right? I mean, that's pretty much what they do. I mean, with the lamb.
And the idea of the scapegoat,
right?
But that was not part of the process early on. That only happened in later Rome, and they used that ritual to replace the demasculation.
Well, that's nice. Kind of like how the Jews used circumcision to replace actually killing the child on the 8th day. It's a little more easier for people to come to that, and instead of actually throwing their kid in the fire of Baal.
Well, and this is the long process of becoming civilized.
yeah, isn't that nice? Yeah, just like how the real religion of the Jews is the Talmud, but they tell everybody it's the Torah, which is all nice and flowery, but the Talmud is like, you can rape a 3-year-old, it's no problem. Like, anyway, so like you said that when the cult became accepted by the state, and we mentioned the spectacle of it all that bloody mess that those Galli were doing was really appalling to Rome and the Roman people, just like circumcision itself was appalling. They would, if you circumcised yourself in Rome, they would crucify you.
And you were no longer recognized as a citizen,
right?
Because you didn't have a male or female status.
So right. So you can't own property, and you can't.
You have no rights. All kinds of stuff.
Weird. So so that practice of genital mutilation is like necessary for the minds of the Galli to be changed. Like they wouldn't allow some of them to become priests until they lost their genitals.
Right.
And that changes.
That was the only way to become a priest. Yeah.
Right. And even Jesus talked about like how eunuchs were holy almost,
Right.
They don't have the will of their carnal desire anymore. They've shed that, I guess. And if you think of this place as a Gnostic hell, it's probably a good idea to not generate more babies or whatever. Yep. The way the Essenes thought and stuff, and the Cathars and all that. But so anyway, they would go around and they would make a bloody spectacle and ask for donations, but they weren't making much money doing that.
No.
You can only make so much money being a bloody mess in the street.
Right.
What they were really doing, the way they really made money and how Rome actually recognized their power, was the fact that they had that it was temple prostitution.
Yeah.
The females that actually had working vaginas would be slaves to the church, and they would give their body to the church, and it was like a status thing.
And it was required of in some societies, it was required of every single woman within the society to be a temple prostitute at one point, at least once. And it was, and it was the idea that, and there is also some argument that some of these temple prostitutes may have been the demasculated galley.
Oh, that too. I mean, that's probably why they dressed up and put on makeup and stuff.
As women, yeah.
Right.
But the thing with when you get into the galley, and when you get into the Maenads of Dionysus, and when you get into, it was the literal function of the initiate being brought through a process to the point of the initiation into the highest level, which is where they would actually marry the god themselves.
Oh, right. Like the nuns marry Jesus in the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes.
Like,
but part of that process included the demasculation. And then you basically became a slave of the goddess, which is I've heard one person say that it's essentially a form of high tantra, where you're basically taking the sex away, period, in the devotion process, which it allows you to raise higher.
Same as a circumcision, like they take away the nerve endings. They take away
the nerve endings.
Right. Yeah.
And
so
it's supposed
that removal is going to change our brains and make us different in a way that we aren't going to masturbate or some shit, whatever fucking Kellogg said back in the 1700s. But I mean, 1800s. But so this, they're cutting to change their heads, and that in itself is mind control, right?
Yeah, but you also have to figure this was a form of ecstatic worship that brought them closer to the purification of raising into those higher realms of consciousness for the purpose of becoming more pure, for the purpose of and at the same time, like we talked about the Essenes, they were outsiders. They weren't part of, they made themselves separate.
Kind of like the aesthetics, or I guess that's the word, that Buddha went and visited and learned from. Like they taught him, if you want to be pure, you got to eat 1 hemp seed a day. Sounds like that's kind of the wrong way. You know what I mean? Like, they think they're doing the pure thing by chopping off their junk, but really, what are they doing? They're altering what God gave them. They're making themselves less than. They're amputating themselves.
They're also worshiping this idea of this this creature,
right?
That is precipitated.
It's crazy,
and it's a child of God. It's a sort of a demigod brought into physical incarnation, very much like any prophet or Messiah through the ages.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, if you can, just as a man, if you can remove your carnal desires, then I'm sure you can get a lot more done. In your job, like you can do a lot more reading and not have to be bothered by
urges.
And exactly. And you're not going to rape the queen. You know what I mean? You're going to be allowed into the sacred places where,
and so you go back into the Adonis cult of Lydia, right? And the kings, after after the original characters had died and faded away and worship was set up, it became very common for the kings themselves to marry the goddess.
Right. The Hyros Gamos.
Right.
It was a common ritual that was every year.
Right.
So that, so that is the sacred union between the king of the land with the priestess of Inanna,
right,
who is the leader of this sex cult prostitution ring.
Mm.
And so like the leader of the land proves that he's the king by making Inanna come or orgasm.
Right.
And then that brings the fertility on the land.
On the land, yeah.
And that's what Easter is. It's Ishtar's orgasm.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the world's making flowers again.
Right.
And that goes, well, go ahead.
Well, and so Ishtar and Easter, right, with Adonis, because there was a story where Adonis had actually suckled on the mother goddess Inanna, or Aphrodite, and basically Zeus got really upset, so he sent a boar into the land of Lydia, this like super pig, basically, that he sent to take out Addis or Adonis. And there's this whole story of the king telling Addis he can't go hunting, but there's this nefarious friend that's in town, and he's like, I'll protect him. And then they end up going out, and Addis ends up, or Adonis ends up dying exactly as the prophecy foretold, which is why he shouldn't go hunting. And that becomes the Easter ham and the 40 days of Lent. That is the lamenting for Tammuz, or the lamenting for Nimrod, young Ninnis, or this that they talk about in the Bible, where they're basically mourning the loss of and all of these cultures have this consistent factor of the mourning process of these gods. And then after so many days of washing the statues with oil and burning sacred incense, then the god would be arisen, and they would all yell, the Lord has risen. And it's very very much like the resurrection of Jesus. A lot of the stuff that goes along with this Tammuz, Addis, Adonis, Nimrod, Osiris cult.
Right. And that's like the fertility of, the Demeter Persephone myth, where Hades takes Persephone and she eats 6 pomegranate seeds. So she's doomed to 6 months in the underworld.
Right.
That's the same as Inanna and Ishtar descended into the underworld.
Right.
That there's a big story.
Well, and they were actually bringing the Addis character back.
Yes. So Tammuz, it's a swap. So basically, Ishtar has to be down there for 6 months, and then she's released because like Enki or something like asked Ereshkigal, her sister, to like let her be free. But then they had a deal where like, oh, you got to have somebody else take your place. And she went up there to the surface and saw that Dumuzid or Tammuz, whatever, was already laying with new women and not wearing mourning clothes, and was like, had already forgot about her. And she's like, that Emmer effer, just like that Midsommar movie. She's like, get him, throw him in the fire, And so anyway, Tammuz gets dragged down into the underworld. And so, well, they got to fornicate first. That's what the Hyros Gamos is.
Right.
So then fertile Ishtar, Easter, is up for the 6 months of the year of the season of life. Right. And then at the end, she goes back down into the underworld. Right. And Tammuz comes up for the winter. And it's a back and forth between them.
Which is Nimrod and the sun pausing for its 3 days of death and resurrection. Exactly. So it all ties. It's this continuing concentric feedback kind of mechanism with all these stories.
Right. So like Jesus is the sun, and Nimrod is the sun, and the sun is the sun, right?
And Mithras becomes the sun,
right? And Mithras too, Sol Invictus, right?
Sol Invictus,
right. And but in order to worship the sun, you also have to worship the black sun, I guess, the feminine, the dark feminine of
sun
Nuit,
behind the sun,
right? Or like like the blackness of the space that the sun inhabits, the Nuit, the night sky, and the Magna Mater, right? Where the mother of the sun, right? And so we're still living in this old religion today, right?
And they modified it for the age of Aquarius or Pisces. And we're going to see it be modified again for the age of Aquarius, which is why this current, head of the Jesuit order, the Black Pope, became the Pope. And now we see the Pope going and trying to incorporate all of these pagan and ancient goddess and, sun cult, and combine them all into a singular,
ecumenical. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that is again the coming together. That's the same thing as what Catholic is. It's like what they did the first time.
Right.
It's almost like it got out of hand, and now they're trying to consolidate again underneath their power. And really, if you look and if you understand the symbols and you look at the Catholic Church, they're not worshiping Jesus. It's pretty satanic. Actually, pretty much totally satanic. And
seems to be.
Like I grew up Catholic.
I mean, you look
I
at
understand it.
Yeah, you look at the throne of the Pope, and it's got the upside down cross on it. They're in the temple. It looks like a viper from the back, and that kind of gets into, again, if you read about the book, The Two Babylons.
Yeah, by Hislop.
Hislop, right? Yeah. He basically argues that, who the founder actually was, Peter Saul or Peter Paul, and it gets into Simon the Magician and the incorporation of the old Babylonian system, basically just revamped. I mean, you see the Egyptian hierophant in the same outfit with the same cap of Dagon with the same staff. You just see the continuation, and the shoes, the red shoes that the Pope wears, the Prada, shoes. Those are in remembrance of the time, in the temple period, when they would sacrifice the bull and all the blood would spill out and stain the early Pope's shoes red.
Just like the red carpet of old, when they would have the big feast. They would they would throw a big line of all the entrails of all the animals that they killed, and all the guests would see how many animals were killed for this feast. Wow, this is a big deal. Let's walk and step on all the guts.
Yeah.
Okay, so like that, what you were talking about earlier sounded like the Epic of Gilgamesh.
So I was going to say,
to fight that monster that was sent.
Enkidu.
Okay. Enkidu, right.
Yeah. But with Gilgamesh, he's basically, he has a confrontation with Inanna, and Inanna wants to marry him, right? And he's like, all the other guys that you've married have, been led to disaster.
No, she's the goddess of sex and war.
Yeah. So, Gilgamesh basically denies her, and that really upsets her. And that, ends up causing this great fight. And it's something to do with she gets upset and has her father release this behemoth that's this great bull, and it's like tearing up cities and towns, and they go and sacrifice the bull, and they take the back leg of the bull, which is representative of Set, and basically throw it at her, and it ends up in the heavens as the Big Dipper, or one part of the swastika that, around the pole star. So it's, but Inanna,
it goes so deep and far out, like it's crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But Gilgamesh was like, no way, I'm not gonna marry you.
Right. He's smart. Yeah. Because she would tear him up. He's like a hero guy, but still, like, she's the queen of heaven. So, okay, what about Astarte and like the Jewish queen of heaven? Do you have any comments on that, or like the other like Rhea, I guess we talked about a little bit, or are there other ones that we need to like tie into? Because it's all kind of the same worship.
Yeah.
Are there, can you think of like, or did we get them all? I guess, I don't know.
There's a couple other, Addis, when you get into his namesake, as far as tracing that back, it has to do with the moon and cycles of the moon. So there is also a direct tie between Addis and Man or Mani, and Sin, the god Sin, who is the moon. And when, in the Bible, when they say go and sin no more, they're saying go and worship the moon no more, which is this moon god Mani or Man that is, again, Addis.
Really?
Yeah.
So when Damien Eccles puts a glass of water out under the moonlight,
right,
to make moon water,
right,
like he's doing that to that same ancient
kind
thing.
of, yeah. Well, and with the moon itself, it's generally seen in Egypt as Isis, and so Isis ties in with Cybele, ties in with Ishtar-Inanna, but the moon itself being Isis, right? The shadow of the moon is Thoth. Thoth is the dark side of the moon. He's the secret wisdom that lies within the moon. He was the counselor and secretary of Isis in the moon. And basically, again, I find ties between Thoth and Addis, or Thoth and Nimrod.
Right, Hermes too, right?
Yeah,
Hermes, Nimrod.
Well, and he's the thrice great as far as Thoth, Hermes, and Mercury, right? But if you go back to the Rosetta Stone, when that was written, right, with the 4 languages, they only call him the twice great, because he hadn't quite been associated with the final Roman character yet.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. So this, like, the ancient wisdom comes from this tradition, and that is the light of Lucifer, I guess. That is, and Lucifer, go ahead.
Poemander, going and talking to the dragon, that encompasses these are early hermetic, tying in with Egypt, and the early Hermetists were Persian, so yeah, there's this direct long link with illumination and the dragon, and all the serpent qualities that come out of that, as far as the wisdom cults, and yeah.
Right. And then you got the celestial great dragon, and that's in the north, and that's like there's a lot to it, because I guess all of the myths are written in the stars, and
right.
That's one of the reasons why they're all the same. I always think that they're also all the same because we're all human, experiencing like humans do, and so we're going to come up with the same.
And back to these symbols. Are they programming the meta reality of what we're experiencing? You know what I mean?
Good question. Yeah.
It's like, is it an inherent? Is it just inherent within the way that this reality is constructed, that these are certain things that are part of the inherent hard programming?
Right. Were they just discovered, or were they invented? Right.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, I guess the first really big Super Bowl thing, the satanic revelation of the method, all that crap, was the reason why YouTube was invented was the Justin Timberlake and
the nip slip.
Yes, exactly. Justin Timberlake exposed the nipple of Janet Jackson,
right?
And on her nipple was a little baby golden sun.
Right.
that was suckling on the nipple of the
on the nipple,
goddess.
like Adonis suckling on
Yes.
yes, exactly.
Exactly.
And
So like this is it's always been this. Go ahead, please.
yeah, and when you get into the Cybele end of it, the women that were in this cult during this similar, like the Day of Blood, where the men would demasculate themselves, the women would actually slice off one breast.
Right. It was the left one, right?
Yes.
Oh, dude.
You're creating the androgyne. You know?
Right. And I think that they did there was like this, there was a festival in Greece for the Aphrodite where the people would dress up half and half male, half female too.
Oh, yeah.
And, but that, I did a show with Brett Carollo, PsyOps Cinema, and we were talking about this satanic stuff and this woman who gets her left breast, she's in a bathtub and she gets murdered and her left breast is like cut, and it's like, oh yeah, I was always like wondering why the left one. You know what I mean? I know that means something, and here it is, like, oh dang, thank you. I learned something again.
Well, and the left is the divine feminine, the right is the divine masculine.
Right.
So to take the left breast, which is the female representation, and to cut that off and make it male is inversion, and leaving the right breast in the male side is another form of inversion.
Right.
So
how
these
satanic
things
is
are,
that?
they're, well, they're always, I don't know, satanic, getting into the ideas of dissolve and coagula, up and down, left and right, playing within the ideas of dualism, versus stepping back and seeing it on a larger picture, with all the nuances outside of the context of dualism. It becomes much more cosmic in essence,
Right. I mean, we are here in this world of duality.
Yes.
But beyond that, above that, there may be that's one of the big deals with the mystery cults and their transgenderism. It's like to go beyond the duality.
Right.
And once you're two things in one, you can create freely without, it's like
and you break free of the dualism.
Right. But I mean, kind of like how the rebus, the original form of the Hermetic tradition, humanity used to be both male and female.
Yeah.
And we were divided.
Right.
And that's why we, like Samael and Lilith, we have this urge to come together again and copulate, like our bodies are built to be together,
And that's what the sex magic is generally for, is to allow these entities to come into you that could not otherwise come together.
Right. You become the playground for Samael and Lilith to feel the feelings. And
and that was a big part of all of these ancient traditions, was to be possessed by the god or the goddess.
Yeah. And that's like the story of everything.
Yep.
Right now. And that's, what the voodoo was, and that's what the eating of Jesus's wafer with the like the host, and it's got the
and they
Maltese
call it
cross on it, stamped on there. The host, right? Yes, you are hosting this demon that comes into you, right?
Yes.
Right. Well, maybe not demon, whatever. Jesus,
the spirit
guy. Jesus is a good guy.
Right?
Right. But still, like, it's you are willingly allowing another entity into yourself to control you. Right.
Or to affect the way that you operate.
And those wafers back in the day, those hosts used to have psychedelics on them, like the kykeon and those things.
Oh yeah.
It all kind of ties in. It's like the one big story.
Well, the kykeon, you had it was cannabis, and then frankincense and myrrh, which would accelerate the cannabinoids, and basically you would get like a 7 to 8 fold high off the kykeon than just taking the cannabis, you know?
Right. And like frankincense and myrrh are drugs in themselves, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, frankincense has cannabinoids in it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And
does it have to be burned, or you can just eat it? Do you
yeah,
have to?
well, if you take the dried resin and just put it in your mouth and kind of not chew it, but kind of just let it, it increases GABA
like
function
nicotine
in the brain.
gum, like it goes through your like cocaine
mucous
does.
membrane.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that increases GABA function in the brain. But in the church, when they put it in the incense burner and light it and walk through the church swinging it, and they're actually lightly dosing the people in the church environment with cannabinoids.
That's right. Yeah, it's called a thurible. And they get like a resin cake of this stuff that they put on a coal, and like the coal slowly burns it.
Yeah.
And it's for consecrating a space,
right,
and putting you in a mindset, and
like people, sage.
Yes, right. And people can listen to the episodes I did with Dr. Ammon Hillman. He was talking about how priests would bathe themselves in cannabis smoke. They would go into this tent and like
and that was when you get into the Jewish idea of Holy of Holies, you know, the recipe for the cannabis oil that Jesus was using to heal the sick and the blind is in the Bible. And, you know, and
cannabosum.
Yeah. And, but basically they would burn in temple documents that they found, they would burn 2 to 3 bundles of cannabis on the altar. And the priest, the high priest of the temple, you know, purification oil, they would rub it all over their body. And this was a cannabosum oil.
That's right.
And then once they got the oil rubbed on them, they would proceed to the next level and the next level. And they would basically, in the Holy of Holies, one day of year, they would burn the cannabis on the altar after rubbing cannabinoid oil all over them, and probably, you know, participating with the kykeon, and go into the Holy of Holies and hotbox it and basically and see God.
That's right. I think they had like jeweled lenses that they would have, glasses that they would look through also. And they had like a string that had lamb's blood on it. And if the blood disappeared, right. Oh, that, right.
Yeah.
And apparently if the blood disappeared, then like the God actually spoke or something. But then if it's still like he's going to suck the blood off the string, it's like really, whoa.
Well, and that was the whole, you know, you go back to Cain and Abel, cannibal, and the idea of Cain killing Abel, and the, you know, Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh coming and saying, you know, what have you done? And he says, the blood cries out to me from the ground. You know, so and he refused Cain's sacrifice because it was all vegetable matter of the field. Cain was a vegetarian, much like the whole Volk movement or the whole New Age movement. And then you have Abel, who is bringing the finest of the flock, which is a blood sacrifice. You know, so this
because blood has life
in it.
Right.
The spirit, it has quote unquote spirit in it, which allows the soul to nest.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, I take my own form of kykeon sometimes and think really deeply. And I wonder if that forbidden fruit was flesh. I wonder if that is because once you eat flesh, you are like recognizing right and wrong, like the tree of good and evil, like you know it's wrong, like it's like to kill and eat someone that, you know what I mean, or something that has life, and it's like a domination of that thing. And
now if you go back to pre-Diluvian, back to Atlantis, right? I've kind of tied the fallen ones in as being the Atlanteans. And when that earth shift change happened. They've done studies in laboratories, and certain differences in the magnetic field that you exist within can cause you to attack and eat pretty much anything that you come, much like the dyads of Dionysus, or the maenads of Dionysus. You know how they would get into that psychotic state, frenzy, and or as they called it, orgy, and they would go with the drum beat through the countryside, and they would rip cows apart and humans apart and just eat whatever they encountered, you know. And that kind of goes back to,
so scary.
Oh yeah, that kind of goes back to the Nephilim, or the fall, you know, the offspring of the fallen ones, and getting into the priests of Baal and the cannibals, and you know, it's and
sounds pretty evil.
Oh yeah. But is that does all of this blood magic per se go back to these the offspring of these fallen ones? You know,
why do they care so much about the blood? Why do they care about the bloodlines of the generations? Right. Yeah.
It's within modern vernacular, you know, you got what's his name there performing Youngblood at the Super Bowl, Super Bowl, you know, ritual.
Right.
You know, it's and you got Silicon Valley, and it's a big thing to, you know, where they hire these young kids and they eat clean and they, you know, exercise, and then they basically some sort of a vampiric process of, you know, bringing youth into the older body.
Oh, right. Yeah, they do. Right. Yeah. Straight up blood transfusion of young blood.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that goes along with like the Elizabeth Bathory and that.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that whole tradition. And, you know, Sandra Bullock has micro needles put the foreskins of Asian children into her face for youth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's science in quotes. Right. It's like, it's the same old black magic.
Yeah.
You know,
well, and you get into Deuteronomy, you know, within the Bible, and the whole book of Deuteronomy are cleanliness and health laws for the Jewish people in that early time when the Torah was written, you know. Right. So,
and for them, like, they can't eat blood.
Yeah, and that's Noetic law. You know, but it also dictates the fact that you can eat the meat, and it's a meat based, you know, but you're not allowed to eat the blood. There's that strict prohibition of eating but you go into some countries and, you know, they have blood sausage and blood pudding, and like, you know, we were over in Ireland, man, and, you know, they brought me blood pudding, and it's just like a scab in a sausage casing, and you know, and it tastes like really very irony, and you know,
tastes like blood, right?
Well, and then in Rome they had this soup called legamos, right, where when they would slaughter a pig for the aristocrats, they would cut off the legs and drain all the blood into a big cauldron, and then the old men of the time, they would only drink the broth for their health, right? Whereas they would give the flesh, the legs, to the young children growing, because they needed the protein. But the old men believed that legamos soup gave them vitality from the drinking of that cooked pig blood, essentially.
Oh, man.
You know, it's blood is an interesting, scary, weird. You know, it's
man. Yeah. Like, so that's why vampires, and that's what that whole tradition of vampires is in every culture. Right. Yeah, Vlad too. And Vlad's related to the guy who just had that coronation with the white goat. Right. Right. Yeah. And Vlad's bloodline is the dragon, because he was in the order, his dad was in the order of the dragon.
Right. And when they inaugurate the king, they bring out the stone of Lafal, the stone of destiny, which is the pillow that Jacob laid his head on to have the night journey.
Right. Is that the stone of scone also? Is that what that is?
It's called the scone of stone as well. Yeah, stone of scone as well.
Right.
It and there's actually an argument between the true, because the true stone of scone is actually a standing stone with these circular rings around it.
In Scotland, right?
Yeah, and they would take the king to it, and the stone would begin to vibrate and sing, and that's how you knew it was the true king. Whereas this pillow of destiny,
like Merlin and the other one, King Arthur, with a sword in the stone, and only the sword would only go open up to him. Yeah, there it is. That's the one that's in the chair of the throne where he gets inaugurated, right?
Yeah. Okay. And that's supposed to go back to Jacob. So there is an argument as to what the true stone of scone is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then that other, like we kind of mentioned earlier about the stone of Magna Mater,
right, is Mother Cybele,
right? And is that? I guess that was stolen, and then did it show up at in Mecca?
Yeah, so there's this, and I think this is a different stone.
Okay.
And this came down, it actually came down, and they broke it up into various pieces. Supposedly the Dalai Lama brought a piece of it when the CIA rescued him from Tibet. There's this artist, Nicholas Roerich, that was talking about, that basically gave one of these pieces of stone to the UN. That is in the construct of the UN building.
Right.
And
Roerich is a huge rabbit hole. Everybody should look at that.
Yeah. But then also, if you go back to H.P. Lovecraft, he talks about this ancient stone that was brought here by the old ones before humans were even created, right? And this stone has existed on Earth, and it's constantly been like a seeing stone that allows you to look into another dimension, right? And it's like the sunstones of the Vikings. You know what I'm talking? So the Vikings had, I wish I knew the name of the rock. I've got a piece of it, but on a cloudy day, you can hold this stone up to the sky, and where the sun is, you'll get a flare. So you can find
you can find the sun behind the clouds.
Behind the clouds, right? And so the Vikings used this stone to be able to navigate within the northern hemisphere, right? And looking into it, this stone has a ratio of 3.3.3.3.3.3 within the crystalline structure, right? And it's like a diamond shaped stone that is like a cloudy black stone but nonetheless, this whole idea of the sacred stone being broken up, part of that stone also, and I don't know if it's necessarily the one that Lovecraft is talking about, but I think it ties in with the idea of these sacred stones, right? But this stone that Roerich had, that the Dalai Lama had, that got distributed to all these power centers around the world, pieces of that are also what ended up in the Kaaba, within the corner of the silver vagina that they kiss.
Right.
Yeah.
Very well said. Yeah, and they circumambulate
7 times counterclockwise,
right?
And they would,
Widdershins. Right?
Yeah, and they would when they would worship Mother Cybele on the Mount Ida, right? So there's a Mount Ida in Phrygia, and there's a Mount Ida in Greece. Mount Ida in Greece is where Zeus was raised. Mount Ida in Phrygia is where Mother Cybele resided, with her cave at the top. And when they would worship Mother Cybele, they would go up a path on the mountain, circumambulating it counterclockwise as well.
Wow. Like the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Similar. Like it's just like you go around the spiral up,
right?
Like the Tool song, like spiral out. Like yeah. So, man, okay. So it's like so much. I mean,
I know it is. It is so much.
So if we can learn the symbols, then we too can understand the language, right? That you are using some of these symbols in your artwork, and you can speak to those of us with eyes to see and ears to hear, right?
Right.
Tell us about that. How that, do you find that is the best way for your art? I mean, are you happy that that's where you've grown into, and is that more effective? And tell us
With
about
the
that.
art, where I'm at now with the art is I'm really using it as a playful mechanism to kind of temporarily poke fun at reality itself. It's to the point where I try to reorganize the symbols in such a manner as to elevate the thinking and to broaden the consciousness in general. Versus actually taking these things and using them for perception control.
Right. Instead of putting people in the box of control, you're showing them the tools and saying, hey, and you're maybe speaking more about the human condition and more about being a soul as opposed, the higher realms, as opposed to, I want to dominate you and control your perception.
The physical,
the way the TV does to people, and the way the Satanists use these symbols, right? You have a different, and I too, I took like the picture on the dollar bill that Nicholas Roerich designed with the Eye of Providence above the pyramid, and I put the Anarchy A in the light above the pyramid, and it's like negating the hierarchical structure, and it's like saying that the true nature of everything, there are no rulers, and so I was able to take their symbol and change it and rework the message into a more positive one. And I changed the words to Latin where it says authority is illusion, and I'm trying to like uplift with these symbols, and you likewise are doing the same. I think that's great. So here, let me give a little screen share of what we got here. Is people can find your work at marx.com. And this is your website. Tell us about where they can find you.
If you want to find all my stuff from my podcast to my Patreon to my website to all my social media, you can go to my Linktree, which is Linktree RMARX, and that'll pull up all my miscellaneous connections.
Very good. Here, let me see if I can find that. We got other Marx here. Marx. Well,
it should just be RMARX.
Linktree.com.
Well, just if you Google Linktree R Marx, it should be the first one.
Okay. Well, but we're currently sharing your website. And this people can find your artwork, and like we have here, fresh works. These are very beautiful works. I mean, I love the geometry and the use of light and composition. And like, I just, it's great. Like, I'll never get bored looking at your stuff. It's wonderful. And I think everybody should check it out. And really, I mean, look at this. Like, this is beautiful. I mean, the light of consciousness, the eyes, what is it looking at? Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, for those of us that take our own little kaiki on, will probably enjoy this as well. And you fit right at home with the posters of the music scene, and you've been hired to, what is this, the Tower? Oh, this is like it. Okay, like it. So your work has been featured. String Cheese Incident. Let's see, who else? Can you give a little bit of
T-shirt last year for Pink Floyd. I've done some various Grateful Dead pieces. My Widespread Panic. My cat did Florida Georgia Line posters for a couple of years. There's Melvin Seals with Jerry Garcia Band.
Right.
That next one right there, Check in the Dark, that was for the show Queen, what's it called? The character's name is Queen Bee, Leighton Meester. She's on some popular show. Then she has a French band. I did their album cover.
Awesome.
Just all kind. Oh, and then
Yonder Mountain String Band. Those guys.
Yonder Mountain String Band. Yep. David Nelson from New Riders of the Purple Sage.
Awesome.
I did their house wine label, which it's a Panama Red is what the the house wine is.
That's great.
That's a Further piece,
right?
Back when Further was touring around,
right? They would play in Boston. They would sell out Fenway Park, and they would do a special T-shirt with like Red Sox and like they kind of cross over the symbolism and so it's great that you can you're able to use those symbols and crisscross them and to mingle them together, and like the lightning of the lightning bolt of the Steal Your Face is the pot of gold, right? This is what you're telling us. Right. So that is, to have that experience is that, I love that, like, I can understand your work, and I'm so glad to see you using these symbols in a way that people will recognize them, and they are drawn to these symbols. They are like archetypal part of us. It's like, Carl Jung will teach you about that. And it's so good that you can wield our attention in this way. And like you said, to pay attention to the movement of the eye and the way the colors affect the brain. These are all very involved fields of study, and it takes a lot of years to get here. And I think you've done a really good job with all your work, and I love how it can capture. That's what a poster does, is it gets the whole message in like an instant, and it captures your eye, and it takes your eye from the letters of the band name into the image, into the letters of where it's going to be, and you can get the whole thing in just like one little swipe of your eye. It's very well done. And I love to feature artists on this show. I'm so glad that you came to share with us today. Is there anything that we missed that you would like to speak about before we go?
Yeah, I tried to cover the things that I was thinking about. I mean, that's the whole thing. We could sit here and talk about this forever, and new things would be revealed as we went.
That's right. It's so intricate and deep, right?
Oh yeah. And I do appreciate the fact that you have an awareness of a lot of these different characters, because a couple friends of mine, they try to listen to the show when I'm talking about some of this, and they're like, we just have no idea what you're talking about, because it's like, it literally is an accumulation, a long, slow accumulation of this understanding and this knowledge,
Right. I'm glad that you think I'm one of the heady cats that understands all the different levels, because I've been here too, man. I've been studying this stuff for 25 years. And so like it's wonderful to speak to another fellow head, a heady cat that really gets it. And heady cats are always welcome on Wake the Dead. Right. So please, nice. We would love to have you back again. If you ever have any topics you'd like to talk about, our door is always welcome. And,
so I'm actually, I don't know if you know, but I'm in the process of writing a book on Nimrod. And I'm like, the editor is basically done with everything I've sent him. I met with him, and he basically said I needed to divide the last chapter and expand upon Adonis, is what it is, Addison Adonis. So I'm actually in the process of getting all those notes together. So maybe when I get the Adonis notes done, I can come back on and we can talk about Adonis and the birth of Freemasonry.
Yeah, that is perfect. I'm going to make a note right now. Adonis part 2, or Adonis episode, second episode. And that's great. To make a book is like, it's a feat. Like, good for you, man. Like,
it's taken a lot longer than I thought.
That's right. But when the
Yeah.
internet disappears and when they burn all the other books, yours is still going to be on the shelf somewhere. You know what I mean? Your words are going to survive, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I just did a show with Jin the Ninja and Nick from Occult Rejects, and we're covering the books of Enoch. And we're covering the third book of Enoch, which is the Hebrew book of Enoch. And the guy, Joseph Lumpkin, the guy that put all this stuff together with the most modern translations of the books of Enoch, he actually had to hunt down this book that he found in a Chicago library, hadn't been touched since like the early 1900s. And nobody even knew it. There was like 6 or 16 of the book, and this was the last one, so the information, and it's just like when you go back to the emerald tablets, and how Alexander the Great had found them and sent them to Heliopolis, and they created a whole college around basically interpreting these hermetic texts that they were finding. And again, these pieces of information consistently have a way of slipping through time and reappearing.
It's really magic. It's almost like time is an illusion. Right? We're just doing the same thing over and over again, spiraling, right?
Well, and the Romans said it's a remembering. Like, we're already dead and gone. This is just a regurgitation and a remembering of the life that we already had. Which does that bind us to fate? It's kind of
yeah, but I mean, how is it that free will is also woven in?
I know,
like it's amazing, this world we live in.
It is amazing. I think it's the most magical, beautiful thing that certain forces seem hell-bent to invert for their own precipitation of control.
Right.
Yeah,
and mind control and domination of others and hierarchical situations and castrating of babies and all that stuff. It leads to a pretty satanic hell. But really, the matrix itself, like that was created, that we live in, it is a beautiful place, and we just fucked it up with all the psychopaths that we allow all these psychopaths to do all this. We just got to clean house, and it'll be all better.
If you look at the Bhagavad Gita, they tell us that we are the ones that set time in motion. We are the one that created all of the beauty that is, the garden and the tree. And then you look at the Torah, being the first, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And when God was done making creation, he looked at it and said, "This is good."
Right.
So
that's right.
Yeah,
knock on wood. Yeah.
It's all perspective, man. It's all perspective.
That's right. Yeah. You can't get caught in the Gnostic trap of this is hell.
Yeah, you can't.
Right. Like it's tough when we're like, our whole society is like, we're eating flesh and we're like watching rapes on TV and murders everywhere. And it's like, our elected leaders are psychopaths that rape children and drink blood, and it's like, how am I in this place, and like, why am I here, what and it gets pretty tough sometimes, especially with the topics that we talk about on the show.
But that's why people become hermits.
Right.
That's why the Essenes were outside of society. That's why Merlin ran away and became the wild man of the woods. That's, you could just go on and on and on about, and Francis Bacon, even when he got, shot down for his scandal in the Senate, he became a hermit and basically created the British Empire.
Right.
It's
and helped create the King James version of the Bible. Like all that, Shakespeare,
the spear, and Francis Bacon was called the spear shaker on the floor of the Senate. It's just all so,
and he was taught, and that was Athena's spear, right? And Athena is the war goddess.
Back to
is Cybele-Ishtar-Inanna.
Yes.
It's wonderful how it ties in.
It's the cosmic egg, man. with the serpent
right.
wrapped around it,
That's right. Yeah, all the potential
yes.
of what is good.
And
It's
that's
like,
their potential and our potential. And I think, when you get into the television, what they are doing is they're controlling the potential of the masses.
that's right.
Mm.
And they've lost the television, so now they have to have this. They have to gain this trust, and they have to make us trust this Elon guy who's gonna. And now Twitter is the new thing. Like, you doom scroll, and you get all of your hell into your eyes.
Even with the release of these Epstein documents, you have certain influencers going and presenting these files of stuff we've already known as a form of prestidigitation to satisfy the majority. It's all
right.
It's all sleight of hand.
Yeah, keep voting. Mirrors. Right, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, keep trusting Bill Gates, who was, I mean, he and Epstein were like bosom buddies. He hired like Epstein's anyway. I mean, it's just so entrenched in evil, and and what did they do? Like, these people, they're hurting children. They're dominating others. Like, they live in a hierarchy of obedience. Like, you can recognize it every time, you know what I mean? And when the Catholic Church and their hierarchy, and the way the demons organize themselves in the Goetia, like from John Dee's book there, you can see there is no free will. It's the absence of free will. And it's the absence of morality as well.
Well, unless you recognize yourself, unless you come to know yourself, until you step outside, like Terence McKenna says, culture is not your friend.
Right.
It's like, cult. Because it is a cult. And, until you can step outside, be that outsider, be that magician, be that one, that wild man of the woods that is, opposed to, it's because it is a horror show. And it always has been a horror show. And I think it's honestly not as horrible now as it has been before. And that may just be the fact that they can cover it up more readily.
I think that's probably
based on controlled forces.
Because you can look under those rocks and it's still there. Like,
it's still there, yeah.
Like Eyes Wide Shut, you know what I mean? Like, that movie, it shows you everything, all that dark evil, and Bill just looks at it and then goes about his life and just
because he has no concept of vernacular or scope of history to be able to understand, have under or overstanding of what he has seen and experienced. It's so foreign.
Right. And by not doing anything, it's complying with that evil, and it's allowing it to continue.
Yeah.
And that's really what our problem is we allow these psychopaths we don't say no, right?
Yeah.
I think that when we understand these symbols and we see how they're using them against us, we can take those keys and, like you have done with your work, and we can reapply them with our message, and we can fight this war on their minds, because they are doing dark magic, and it is they are worshiping the same ancient goddess, and it is it is Mystery Babylon on the beast,
the beast system.
Yes. Right. So in order to fight that, I think that it takes a moral compass, and to be consistent, I think that, and to express and to use your voice and your words, your magic, right?
Yeah. Here's my little pin case that I keep all my pins in, right? Okay. And when you open it up,
Pandora's box. Oh, that's great.
Destroy Babylon.
That's right. That's right.
But I think it's like Philip K. Dick says, the empire never ended. It's a perpetual rising and fall. Like, Rome is falling every day. It's just, do you choose to watch it? or do you choose to separate yourself from it, be the creative mind of your own mind's eye, and create your own reality and bring forth positivity within the world and show people that things can be better? And you got to let love in. You gotta participate with more
the creation
altruistic.
and the love. Right.
Yes.
Right. Instead of like, if we don't participate, then we allow the decay to occur.
Right.
We need to combat that decay with love and creation.
Right.
And that's what God created, and we are built in his image. We are here to create and to express.
Yes.
And if we can find the voice of our higher self, then we can use that voice. We can express that with our hands and our mouth and our lungs and our breath, the breath of our life, so we need to be here to fight this evil that they're trying to take over this realm, really. And we need to be here and fight.
Right. And since the fall of the Tower of Babel, the Bible tells you that God inherently took a step back and left the world under the control of the Lord of the air, which is Samael.
Right.
And all the third book of Enoch, the Hebrew book of Enoch, say that Samael is the angel of the earth. But Metatron, the representation of man himself, is the Lord of the earth, and it's the idea that they have power in this realm, just like we have power in this realm, so.
They might be able to dominate us in our minds, but we have the power of creation.
Right. Which they don't.
Right. Yeah. All they can do is copy. And
right.
Every time they copy, it's always an inversion copy, like a mirror. It's always upside down and backwards.
Well, and that's even with us talking on this. When I put that Destroy Babylon sticker up, it was backwards.
Right.
All this video stuff that we're doing, everything is inverted.
Right, and it's all ones and zeros, and it's all ultimately that
black scrying screens.
Yes, But we're using these tools for a benefit. Hopefully, we are planting seeds in the minds with people's ears are here listening, and we are hopefully they're gonna take what they hear in their ears, and they're gonna go to that black scrying mirror and type in R Marx and the link tree and find your work, and with their eyes they can see those symbols, and we're gonna put all these good energies and good messages into their ears and eyes, and we're pushing the goodness into their heads instead of this satanic signal that's always going.
But unfortunately, it was Nietzsche who said that the youth in the future will have to become encyclopedias of evil in order to combat the evil itself.
I'm already there. I think
I know.
I know all their tricks. I'm learning every day.
Well, and ultimately, I think we have ascended beyond MK Ultra.
Right.
We are now plus ultra, essentially.
And God bless Tracy Twyman with her plus ultra. She had that going for a while. I miss Tracy. She taught me a lot, and I'm sure.
I chatted back and forth with her a few times.
Nice. I had a couple emails with her thanking her for her book. Everybody should read her books. And she was on the main nerve. She was learning about the demons and about the control with money and finance, and communing with those demons.
It's just, unfortunate, the whole turn of events.
Of course, right. We don't need to talk about that. But God bless her, and we love her. And,
so I should probably be jumping off. I got some.
I hear that. It has been. I'm sorry you had to pull the plug. I was trying to keep track, and I have been landing us gently. It's been 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Well, you had me plug myself, and then just the natural course of conversation.
Right.
It's like I said, we could sit here and talk about this stuff.
That's right.
For infinitude. It's
God bless you for bringing your voice and your words. Man. We really appreciate you. And thank you, listeners, for listening. And we will see you next time on Wake the Dead.